Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen, and we're having the Sunday conversation on a Monday. It was kind of funny. I got a lot of people that reached out to me yesterday talking about how they weren't going to be able to make it. Too nice of a day. So we moved it one extra day. We'll maybe even do the same this next weekend with Memorial Day weekend coming up. But we've got ourselves a good show on tap for tonight. Obviously, four-star cornerback Elijah Dotson commits to Pitt. Also, the transfer portal rankings. People continually ask me questions, whether it's the Facebook group, Pitt Panther Fanatics, plenty of people in there talking about being worried about the portal rankings and where they are. And we're going to talk about why, to take a little bit of note to that, why it's important, but also, too, why a lot of that is really based off of some bad information in terms of how they rank those schools with guys that are leaving and guys that are coming to the institution. So we'll go into a little bit about that. Also, too, Pat Narduzzi, with all of his faults, a guy who has been successful at Pitt, maybe not sustainable for the long period of time, but he has had success. The second most wins in Pitt history at the school, ranked 38th in the CBS College Football Rankings poll and 8th in the ACC. We'll talk about that and why I think that's pretty outrageous with the wins that Pat Narduzzi has had, the success he's had in the ACC. We'll go into a whole bunch of that. But to start, obviously, the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Of course, guys, two great individuals, Pitt men, who own the institution, own the place. Obviously, Colonial Beer, plenty of different options when you go in there, obviously, whether you're having a party, a tailgate, anything like that, light beers, lagers, but more importantly, the Fake Slide Pilsner, which helps pay the athletes at the University of Pittsburgh and supports Alliance 412, which is a preferred collective of the University of Pittsburgh. Again, guys, Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Again, anytime you're able to help out a small business, but more importantly, a business owned by Pitt men, you always support them in any way, shape, or form. But also, too, make sure you go in there and, of course, pick up the Fake Slide Pilsner, which helps support paying the players at Pitt, but also, too, helping support Alliance 412, which is a preferred NIL collective of the University of Pittsburgh. Guys, again, plenty on tap today. Before we get the show started here, obviously, guys like Adam here, WRW Pitt, smash the like button and subscribe. Of course, if you haven't done so, subscribe to the show. As always, helps out with the algorithm, along with liking the video. It allows more people to see the video, more comments, more people tune in. We have more dialogue, more questions, but more ideas and different opinions, which is always why we're here and why it makes it so fun. What's the skinny on Elijah Dotson? We'll get into that. I think we will keep Dotson all through till signing day because of the relationships. They still mean something even with NIL. I agree, and that's our first topic of tonight. Obviously, four-star cornerback Elijah Dotson commits to Pitt. And I, again, talked about it, I want to say about a week ago, talked about how I thought Pitt wasn't the leader. It came down to the wire. Plenty of great relationships that were built there. I think we'll talk about a little bit about Archie Collins and why I think he doesn't get enough credit for how well he recruits, but the aspect that he was involved in this, the relationship built there, also with Pat Narduzzi, talking about that. But obviously, too, when you go into Detroit and you're able to hold off a school like Michigan State and Michigan, which are two schools that Elijah picked Pitt over, on top of Penn State, Indiana, Louisville, Michigan State, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Illinois, and so on. I think we can talk about it enough here to say when you beat out a number of those schools, especially in the Big Ten, especially in their backyard, for a guy like Elijah Dotson, who is extremely athletic. I tweeted out on Saturday talking about how surprised I was because, one, going into Michigan, number one, and the competition that what it came down to, and from people that I talked to, Pitt was certainly in the top three, which was certainly good, but we've been in the top three before. Talking to a number of people, obviously Michigan State and Michigan, two schools that were trying to get back into it, obviously that were very much connected in terms of what was going on with Elijah Dotson. But even with NIL, relationships really took it the distance here, and I think this was a great business decision for Elijah Dotson. One of the things that was really noticeable here was the fact that Elijah talked about his relationship with Archie Collins. And I tweeted out again, obviously, on Saturday. This really proves overall how well Archie Collins is finally being noticed. And we've talked about this for years, obviously, with the numerous players who have come through Pitt. Obviously, everybody thinks about Dane Jackson, Damar Hamlin going back from cornerback to safety, MJ Devonshire, Marquez Williams, AJ Woods, Jason Pinnock. The names go on and on and on. Jordan Whitehead, where he was in the safety position, the cornerback position. Plenty of names that we've talked about through the history since Pat Narduzzi has arrived in 2015. It's about time that Archie Collins got a little bit of recognition, if not a lot more recognition. He's a guy who's known as a technician, a guy that really teaches the techniques of how to be an elite defensive back, not just in college, but for what is run at Pitt, for instance, the quarter-style defense, an NFL-style defense where there's no help over the top. It's truly one-on-one. It just goes to show that guys are now seeing that. And the amount of defensive backs that go to the National Football League is being noticed. And it's being noticed on a national schedule, on a national scale, to where people are having the day-to-day conversations that say, man, Pitt is known for going from college to the NFL and being prepared and being elite. Obviously, Avonte Maddox, another name that's in there, a guy who played cornerback, now playing corner and safety in the National Football League with the Eagles. You look at it overall, there's been plenty of success. And I think that it's not just at Pitt. When Pat Narduzzi was at Michigan State, obviously you had guys, most notable Trey Waynes, a 2-star cornerback, goes to Michigan State, goes in the first round, goes to the Minnesota Vikings. You just look at the list overall, it's well documented. And I think that, Pat Narduzzi's gotten a lot of credit, but guys like Archie Collins continues to show up and continues to develop. And the same thing goes for Corey Sanders, a guy who continues to show an elite style of being able to recruit guys that fit this system, who can play in this system. You look at the safety room right now. Obviously, Cruz Brookins, a guy who is a late add, Whippeal out of Steel Valley, which was huge. He continues to show up. He's supposed to have a major impact this year. Obviously, Donovan McMillan, Jesse Anderson, Javon McIntyre. I mean, the names go on and on and on. Shadarian Harrison, that's also back there. He goes between safety and corner. You've got numerous guys back there that have done a tremendous job, and Damar Hamlin, Paris Ford. The list goes on and on. And these guys, in my opinion, don't really get enough credit. They recruit the position that they know that they can see, hey, it's a projection-based business, where they are now to where they can be. And these guys continue to pump out tremendous talent within the defensive backs, whether it's the cornerback room or the safety room. When you look at Elijah Dotson, I truly believe in, they talked about how he's going to come in as a cornerback, obviously with Pitt. I think he'd be a tremendous cornerback addition, obviously, for the room, a guy who can compete to play early. That's what kind of level of play he's at. You look at the measurements overall, 247 Sports obviously has him as a 4-star cornerback. We go into his measurements here. If it pulls up here, I had it here. Here we go, 4'2". He's a 4-star recruit. Obviously has on here on 247 as a safety product. Obviously, he'll play corner. I think he could play safety, but I think he's just going to be an elite level style of corner. 6'2", 175 pounds. He'll add on more weight when he gets into the Pitt Ironworks. Obviously, Coach Stack and his crew, what they're able to do on a consistent basis, I think they're not talked about enough, how well of a job that they do on a day in, day out basis. They do a great job. When he gets in the Pitt Ironworks, he'll certainly add more weight. But I think he's a guy that potentially that, you look at like a Jordan Whitehead. I think he's got that level of style of talent. I think when he comes in, he'll learn the defensive side of the ball. Once he masters that side of the ball, maybe gets an addition to where he can go on the offensive side of the ball. I know it's a lot to ask. There's only so many guys that can do it. Obviously, you got a guy like Travis Hunter out of Colorado who's able to do it. Jordan Whitehead did it while he was here. He had numerous packages. Elijah Dotson could potentially be a guy that can do that because of the potential he has, obviously the talent level. But obviously, when you get to the college level, it's a completely different world in terms of being able to play both. You always have to worry about workload management. How many snaps is he getting on both sides of the football? How much do you practice? All that kind of stuff goes hand in hand. But obviously, when he comes to Pitt, he'll be a defensive player to start. And again, it's another recruiting win. I think overall, when you look at this room, obviously you had Elijah Dotson commit to Pitt. Obviously, Shep Turk, the defensive tackle. Obviously, too, he committed to Pitt out of Thomas Jefferson, a Whitfield hometown kid. We'll go into more about him. I think his tape, one, talk about it, just a tremendous name for defensive tackle, Shep. A great talent overall. I think we'll get into more about him here in a little bit. Only so many topics we can get to tonight. I'll probably go over more about Shep in the next one. I think that'll be a great topic to go over. Obviously, hometown kid. That's a really big addition, especially to talk about defensive tackle, but he'll come to Pitt as an offensive lineman. He'll be really good as offensive linemen go, just really aggressive. And I think when you watch his tape, he'll continue to climb the charts, especially too what he looks like. But overall, another great ad. You look at this room, I think that, you look at the Pitt recruiting class right now. Pitt obviously has its quarterback, potentially going for a second quarterback. One of the things I wanted to drop tonight, obviously, I think Pitt will eventually grab 2 quarterbacks in this class, whether it's 2 2025 guys. That'll be a question mark as we go forward. Is it going to be 2 2025 guys, or do they add someone else in the transfer portal after this year? They won't add before this year starts, obviously. They won't do that. Don't have any room for it to begin with. But after the season, they'll certainly have that conversation as it continually moves on to add another quarterback to just help round out that quarterback room to what Cade Bell wants it to be. That'll be something to continue to watch going into next year. But overall, you like this room. You like the recruiting class that we currently have. The one thing I think we continually have to look at that I think that I have a question mark that can potentially be something we ask a question about down the road is that when recruiting wide receivers, I think there's a total niche when it comes to Cade Bell's offense. And when I talk to numerous coaches that he's faced, people that have coached on his staff, you look at Western Carolina when he was there, he loves a specific type of wide receiver. A lot of these guys aren't big guys. You look at the guys that are currently there that committed. They're guys that are about 5'11", 6 foot. I think the most recent one, obviously 6 foot, but tremendous speed. They gotta have speed. I think that's something that they've been really emphasizing in terms of what they want to bring in on a consistent basis. That's been a huge thing that they've talked about, bringing in those guys. And I think that the speed aspect of it, you can't teach speed. Obviously during the offseason, you can do what you want in terms of being able to improve a little bit here and there. But I think just some guys are really, truly gifted in being able to apply that speed, and especially to the college level, especially the Power 4 level. You want guys with speed. And clearly, Cade Bell is a guy that wants speed. Me personally, I think I like to mix in a little bit. You got guys that are a little bit smaller. That's great. Bring in the speed. That's great. But I think you want to go out and add. And there's certainly guys that are certainly on the market that they're looking at that have size at 6'1", 6'2", wide receivers that they're looking at. Like to add a couple more wide receivers that have that size. So you have a little bit of both. You're not running out there with a bunch of guys that are just in the 5'10", 5'11", 6 footers. You want a little bit of guys that have that height. Kenny Johnson can add a little bit of that height. I think just because of numbers, they couldn't add certain guys to the portal. Only so much space. Only have 85 scholarships still apparent, from what the NCAA says, you can only have 85 scholarships. I love Bostic out of Iowa. He was a guy 6'3", ends up committing to Texas A&M. We just didn't have room. Talked about how, had numerous conversations with him, how Pitt was still his dream school, wanted to go there. Obviously just didn't work out. He goes to Texas A&M. But overall, I like this ad with Pitt. I think it's a great ad for the cornerback room. 4-star commit. You have to like it. But I think overall, when you don't even just take away the 4-star status, look at the overall offer sheet. You like what you see. There's teams, multiple Power 4 teams, and especially too when you can go into Detroit, where that's a pipeline we've been trying to get for numerous years now. That's a big get. And I think Detroit is full of great talent. That's why I was happy to go in there and see that the Pitt was able to grab a great talent in terms of Elijah Dotson. All right, let's see here. Adam, talking about how keeping this through. I think it actually does. Don't get me wrong. It's still not over. I know there's still teams looking to reach out and still trying to dig their heels in a little bit, see what the conversation pushes on to. It's certainly not over till it's over. But I think that at this point, I think the relationship that he's built with Archie Collins and Pat Narduzzi, but I think that what they're selling is going into Pitt, being developed and going to the National Football League. Jeremiah Anglin Jr., a guy that just committed from Kentucky, had a conversation with MJ Devonshire, talked about why he went from Kentucky to Pitt, the process of going to Pitt, and then now going to the Las Vegas Raiders, and what they're able to build out. I think overall, when you look at the commitment wise, I think it's overall this could potentially hold up because of the relationship factor. You still in this day and age of college football. I told you guys last week, I was still shadowish. I didn't think we'd end up with Elijah Dotson. Wrong on that. We end up getting in the relationship aspect of it comes really important to what the decision comes down to. NIL still NIL. I think that, in this scenario, we could potentially see Elijah stick because of the strong relationship he has with Archie Collins, which is huge. I've been saying this for a while. Relationships are still important in college athletics in terms of recruiting, going to the next level. You got to trust people. Jeremiah Anglin Jr. talked about that, going from Kentucky to Pitt. It was a business decision. It was really an easy decision for him. And obviously Archie Collins was still in contact with him, just great recruiting wise, but also too, just reaching out and wanting to hear about how not just the athlete, but how is the student doing? How is the actual individual doing in college? Forget the football aspect of it. What's the life outside of football? And I think that kind of stuff, again, we talk about relationships. I think that's huge. And I think when you look at Pitt staff overall, you look at the coaches that are there, they fit the mold of the culture that's being run at Pitt right now, which is concerning to the point where they are concerned, not concerning, but concerned with, the aspect of the overall development of each one of the players, whether it's in this class, the class that's already there, the players that are already on the roster. You love to see the relationship building and why the guys continually stay. And you look at overall the transfer portal era, Pitt, when they look at the guys that have left, and we'll go into the transfer portal after this, but the guys that leave in the transfer portal, for the most part, are looking for more playing time. You've had a little bit of that. Obviously, they wanted to keep Dalen Hayes. Dalen Hayes picks the money, goes to Colorado. He's got one last year. Good luck to him. Obviously, Solomon DeShields goes to Texas A&M. But overall, you look at the team overall, it's just guys looking for more opportunity to play because they know they're not going to play here. I think Pitt's done a really good job at that. How confident are you in the O-line from Football Hawk? I think right now, when it comes to a confidence level out of 10, I would put it at a 7. And I put it at a 7 right now in terms of where we are out of spring camp, things that I've heard about. I love how Branson Taylor's coming back. I love how Ryan Bayer's coming back. So your anchors on both sides of tackle are really solidified at this point. The questions I have are really in the middle. I have B.J. Williams starting at right guard. I think he's going to be a tremendous right guard. The raw material just that he has, just the overall technique he continues to build. I think he's an overall just incredible athlete. The repetitions, I was so happy to see during his freshman season, because you knew Pitt wasn't going to do anything. Once we got past the 4th or 5th game, you knew we weren't going to do nothing this year. I was happy to see, even after the injuries, the repetitions he was able to get on a day-to-day basis, the footwork, his overall hand placement, just the aggressiveness with his hands, and just being violent at the point of attack is what you love to see. I think I have him at right guard because, one, he makes the most sense, and I think he's ready to take that next leap. I think he has a hell of a year this year and continues to develop the way he does. The question I have at this point that I still have the area of question is center and left guard. Obviously, Ryan Jacoby is going to be a huge get back. He had a great fall camp last year before the injury. He's now 100% healthy. He'll be going into fall camp 100% healthy. But then you also have Lyndon Cooper. Does Lyndon Cooper to move to left guard? Since he's an older guy, does he play at center? But obviously, you still have Terrence Moore. Terrence Moore has done a phenomenal job since he's gotten here. I think his physical attributes, his tools, you look at his footwork and his technique, especially with his feet, are just been incredible. I think as you watched him over time, especially last year, he continues to get better and better and better. It's going to be hard to keep him out at the center position as a guy who's already played there. He continues to get better. I think he's going to get really good this year. You're going to see that camp where fall camp comes around. You got Ryan Jacoby, Lyndon Cooper, and Terrence Moore really competing for that. Those two spots, in my opinion. And you still got guys behind him. Terrence Enos, Isaiah Montgomery, Jackson Brown, a guy who can shift outside and inside. I think he's going to be pivotal for the tackle position. He's the guy that, if something happens or goes down, he's that next guy. He is a guy that continually gets better. Again, a Pitt guy from Hard, obviously a Pitt legacy. I love how he continues to get better, and he's going to be a major factor this year. I wouldn't even be shocked if he even saw a little bit of a rotation because he is that good. He could be a starter. That's how good he's gotten. I think that him coming over from Cal just fits, and I think he's just done a phenomenal job. He's a true Pitt man. Comes from a great family, and again, Pitt legacy. And that's why I'm just happy to have him here in Pittsburgh. He's going to be a key piece this year, so he continues to be a major factor. Overall, the O-line, though, I put it at 7. I want to see where the inside portion, where we go. I think if I had to pick something right now, I would say Terrence Moore at center, Lyndon Cooper at left guard, and then B.J. Williams at right guard if I had to bet. So a left to right, I would have Branson Taylor, Lyndon Cooper, Terrence Moore, B.J. Williams, and then Ryan Bayer, which, again, I think overall, you look at an offensive line, for God's sakes, if we stay healthy, man, that looks good. And then if you have an injury on the outside, Jackson Brown can play left tackle or right tackle, so you have a guy who can swing there. And then obviously, too, in the inside, you got those 2 spots that are really opened up, in my opinion. So then you still have Ryan Jacoby that's there, or Lyndon Cooper. And you also have Terrence Enos who can play tackle. Terrence Enos can also go on the inside. Isaiah Montgomery, he's also there. I just think you have a number of different options that you can really work inside and out. We saw last year with injuries, we weren't as deep as we thought we were because we had numerous injuries. Obviously, our best lineman, Matt Gonsalves, goes out. Then on top of that, you had Ryan Jacoby early on in the year. B.J. Williams had injuries at times. Then you had other guys on top of that. Jake Cradle was out for an extended period of time. Just so many injuries you can never have. And one thing that was told to me, which I completely agree with, I'm a guy hard at hearts. I think the best college football teams, the quarterback position is truly important, probably the most important on the field. But your second is your offensive line and your defensive line. And that was replicated to me from 3 or 4 coaches between the ACC and the Big Ten and the SEC. I just think that the offensive line and the defensive line are so critical. I really, I just think it's a true art. And I think when you look at guys up front, people outside think, wide receiver, running back, tight end, that's all well and good. But if you can't block anybody, your offense won't go anywhere. And I think that, you look at the offensive line and defensive line, in my opinion, I do count those as skilled positions. And probably those guys got to be the most skilled guys on the field to be able to be consistent on a day in, day out basis. And I think Branson Taylor, Ryan Bayer, Ryan Jacoby, Lyndon Cooper, Terrence Moore, B.J. Williams, all those guys, Jackson Brown, continue to just spark. I think they've done a hell of a job, and we continue to watch them and see what they do. But at this point, I got it at 7 because I still have question marks there on the inside. I want to see where it ends up and watching fall camp and how it all comes together, but also, too, just how the offense does. I told people today, we were tweeting about it a little bit back and forth from a couple people. I'm less concerned about the defensive side of the football because just the coaching staff that's on that side, you still got Ryan Manilek over there, Archie Collins, Randy Bates, and Corey Sanders. You have one new guy in Tim Doust, which, again, we talked about that hire coming from Charlie Partridge. Anybody you hired after Charlie Partridge was never going to match to that. We'll continue to monitor and see how Tim Doust does. One of the things I love to hear is that he's more aggressive in terms of, hey, we were aggressive before with Charlie Partridge. I didn't think we could get more aggressive, but that's what they say. We're getting more aggressive in terms of playing more vertical, getting behind the line of scrimmage, and continuing to make plays behind the line of scrimmage, tackles for loss and sacks. And I also love on the inside how we've returned to defensive tackles that are smaller, but guys that are quicker and faster, playing vertically and getting behind the line of scrimmage. You saw last year we had the bigger guys. I still think they were good, but bigger guys that just weren't fast twitch. And you had the Devin Danielsons, the Tyler Bentleys, DeAndre Jules, just guys that weren't quick. You saw that. This year you have Sean Fitzsimmons, Nakai Johnson, Elliott Donald, numerous guys there on the inside. And obviously, too, you're going to have guys, Francis Breu, a guy that's big in stature, but extremely quick. Jasir Whittington, a guy that's extremely quick. Nick James, big in stature. Got to see him in person at the spring game at the close scrimmage. He's a big guy, man, but he can move. I mean, that's just the difference. You're looking at guys this year that can truly move, that fit the mold of what we've truly had in the past with Kalijah Cansey, Jalen Twyman. That's kind of what you wanted to see, and getting back to that, where Pitt was truly successful. When you look at Pitt, man, just how they develop certain guys, that's why guys come here, especially guys like Jasir Whittington and Francis Breu. They're elite at developing guys that are smaller in stature, the 6-footers, 6'1", 6'2", even potentially 6'3", but they're guys that are quick. That's how our defense survives, but more importantly, thrives. And we're in the top 5, top 2, and even number 1 when it comes to sacks and tackles for loss. So I'm not concerned about the defensive side of the football. Defensive end, I think Chief Borders was a great add. Anything I've talked to from the coaches that I know, and especially too when you talk to guys who cover Nebraska, talked about all the time, that kid really took the next step this spring in terms of what he was last fall. Had only had a certain number of tackles, but he had certainly a number of pass breakups. Was getting more and more playing time. Was going to get a lot more playing time this year, but wanted to take that next step and wanted to go towards more of a 4-3 defense, a lot like what Nate Matlack was looking at, to where he wanted to go into a 4-3 and really establish himself to be an elite pass rusher in a 4-3 setting. I think there's nothing more you can do about that. You love to hear that, especially too when Nebraska's head football coach Matt Rule, who I have a lot of respect for because in the coaching community he is well loved, well liked, and a guy who was well known in his time at Temple, Baylor, from turning programs who were down in the dust, near death, and just returning them to life and creating 9, 10+ win seasons, and especially his time at Baylor, what that outlook looked like. And he took that and he took them all the way to the Big 12 championship game. You got to love it. So it means a lot coming from him too when he says he's the most improved player. You got to love it. The O-line needs 2 swing players just in case of injury. I agree. And I think those swing guys at this point, obviously, depending upon how it works out on the inside, you'll have those Terrence Moores, obviously Lyndon Cooper, Ryan Jacoby, but then you'll also have Jackson Brown, Terrence Enos, Isaiah Montgomery. You'll have those guys that are currently in there, and I like that room the way it is. The big physical guys will be able to step up, and you'll see some more names step up during the fall camp who continually get better. You need those big uglies. I couldn't agree more. So that was Elijah Dotson, but we go into the transfer portal rankings. One of the things we talked about previously, and I truly hate the rankings, and people were bringing it up, and whether it was on 3, the ranked here, we had 13 or 14 guys go into the portal, or I think it was overall 17 guys go into the portal. Well, when you're 9 guys over the transfer limit, over the scholarship limit, you need 9 guys to leave. It is what it is. 9 guys to leave, plus you want other guys to leave to be able to create more space to where you can add guys in the portal. And I tweeted it out numerous times. You look at the guys that we've brought in. Maybe I can actually bring it up here. The transfer portal additions that we've had. 14 guys that Pitt's brought in since the portal opened after the season ended, which is, when you really think about it, me personally, I like the additions to where they have 14, but it's not like Colorado or Louisville where you're bringing in 35, 40, 45, 50 guys. I think that's too much. You have no continuity. You have no type of culture. You have too many guys going in there where how the hell they're going to learn your defense or learn your offense? You have too many moving parts. I think when you're in that 15 to 20 range, I think that it's where you want to stay happy. You want no more than that, because 20 guys, I mean, hell, that's more than 20% of your roster that's turned over on top of the new guys you're bringing in. It's almost like, if you bring in 20 transfer guys, let's say plus 20, plus even 25 high school recruits, it's almost 50%, more than 50% of your roster that's overturned. I mean, that's a lot of different guys that you're looking from a completely different team. That's kind of where Pitt was this year. They bring in 14 guys plus 20 plus recruits in terms of the high school recruits. It's a lot of guys you're turning over. So it's a different team. And I think that you brought back the guys you wanted to bring back. You held on to numerous guys. Shout out again, if you were an Alliance 412 member, thank you for what you do. Just tap yourself on the back. Obviously, I'm a Alliance 412 member. Shout out to Alliance 412 for doing their due diligence and working their tails off. They bust their ass on a consistent basis, day in and day out. And that's Chris Bickle, John Pelusi, Jeff Goldberg. Those guys just do a hell of a job day in and day out. Also, too, let's see if we can get it here. I can pull it up. Obviously, too, if you have not done so, and I love to see this, too, if I can pull up an image here, maybe I can share the screen. If you have not done so, Matt Speck, again, a guy who is uber talented, does a lot of great stuff in terms of being able to be creative and in terms of what they do with cleats, shoes, and whatnot. You saw the tweet I had recently on X. Matt Speck sent out an email to people. If you're looking to get the new shoes, the Pitt shoes, if you haven't seen it, if you haven't seen the Pitt shoes, drop it in the comments section. And if you haven't seen it, I'll bring it up I'll bring it up, obviously, onto the screen if you have not seen the pictures. They talk about the creativeness of Matt Speck, and obviously, the great job he's done. The design on the shoe is tremendous. I will be going out and getting those shoes. I think they're great for game days, obviously, just to have some Pitt swag. You love to have it. But also, too, if you didn't know, $50 of every purchase will go towards a donation towards Alliance 412 and paying the players. And if you can imagine, the hundreds, if not thousands, of Pitt fans are probably going to buy them, because I had numerous people reaching out to me when I tweeted it during the spring game. They were saying, hey, how the hell can I get those? Well, now's your chance. Matt Speck, if you have not reached out to him, go on to X. Great individual, a guy that's easily approachable. We can talk to him any place. Just go up and grab him. Extremely nice individual. Talk about a true Pitt man, willing to help out, and obviously loves Pitt and wants to help Pitt any way he can. Just great person, great individual. If you have not done so, reach out to him. Go to his Twitter account. Actually, as a matter of fact, we're going to share it. We are going to do it, okay? Because I think that we have to talk about it a little bit. I know I'm talking about wanting to go in the transfer portal rankings, but we can bring this up here. Let me see here. Share my screen here. Take down this banner here real quick. Present. Oh, got to take this down too. Sorry. Present. Share screen. Share screen. All right. If you have not followed him, and I'll make that bigger here. If you have not followed him, Matt Speck, again, custom cleats, custom shoes. Obviously a guy, again, awesome design. He does a great job. See here. He does all these shoes. Always fun stuff he posts here. Let's see if I can find. Thank God for the touchscreen here on these laptops, man. This is something else. This is nice. Here are the Pitt shoes. If you were looking to get them, here's what they look like. Look at that design. Obviously, it's beautiful. You got the Nike swoosh, obviously. Pitt here. Obviously, these are Oakland originals. This is the 412 Alliance 412 versions. If you have not seen these yet, tremendous looking shoe. Just incredible design. Obviously, Matt Speck says here, in case you missed it last night, sign up with the link above to stay up to date. Appreciate all who have already signed up and expressed interest. First update will be going out most likely early next week. He obviously sent that email out, but wanted to show you guys here. Just a great design. Obviously, really appreciative of what Matt does on a day in and day out basis. Just a very cool looking design, to say the least. I mean, let me know what you guys think in the comments section. When this video goes up, obviously, I love to see the comments. I always read the comments afterwards and diagnose them. I love to get in the chatter box a little bit. But also, too, love to see your guys' thoughts on a day-to-day basis. But obviously, these are some really cool-looking shoes, and I cannot wait to go out and get them. Obviously, it's very rare you find that. Obviously, the H2P, too, I always thought that was really cool. But the Oakland Originals, the marketing entity that's a part of Alliance 412, which helps teach the players how to market themselves, build their brand. The only place that had it first, obviously, the University of Pittsburgh. The players certainly utilize that, not just at football or basketball, but all the sports at Pitt. And, of course, if you graduate from Pitt, depending upon how you leave and whatnot, you can be a part of the Oakland Originals for the rest of your life. I mean, that is a pretty cool attribute and a selling point to when you're going to Pitt, that you have this as a tool to go forward. Obviously, legends like DeJuan Blair, LaShawn McCoy, they can all certainly use it as well. But very cool, to say the least. So go check out Matt. Great individual. I've got a true Pitt man at heart. Obviously, just an easy person to talk to. Guys, go ahead and talk to him. Go back to the banners here. Obviously, we talk about the transfer portal rankings. Guys, again, you look at the On3, and again, I like this here. The portal rankings are overrated. Speedy Tortoise, I agree. They're really marketed off of how many guys leave your program. Okay, how many guys have left your program and how many you brought in? They actually penalize Pitt because they didn't bring in more guys that left. Well, when you're over the scholarship limit and then you need even more guys to leave to add in more additions, because unfortunately, for Pitt to get better, some of those guys had to leave. It is what it is, especially for cultural reasons and whatnot. You had to have those guys leave. That's my problem with it. You look at those portal rankings. They gave, I think CBS or On3 gave Pitt a D plus rating or a C rating. You look at, for instance, Clemson. Clemson didn't bring anybody in the portal, which I dap up, Dabo. I think he should have brought in maybe one or two wide receivers, but I think that's not his issue. I think he needs to allow Garrett Riley to coach the offense and actually run his offense. He's almost, which is kind of crazy to think about. He's an offensive guy. He kind of coaches like a defensive coach, like Pat Narduzzi. He wants his offense run a certain way. Pat Narduzzi obviously makes an adjustment this year to hire a guy and let him run his offense his way. But overall, when you look at the transfer portal, they gave Clemson a D rating. How did they get it? It should be an automatic F for not adding anybody. So that was a very weird thing. Clemson only lost 2 players to the portal. They went into spring camp with 127 players. They go out of camp with 125. How do they not get the F rating if they didn't add anybody or they didn't use the portal? That's kind of why I tell people a lot of these guys in the portal are a risk, but also, too, you get to watch the projections and then also, too, rely on your coaches for how they develop. And you look at the guys that are currently in the portal that we add, and again, I was looking that up as a matter of fact. See if I can go on to my Twitter account here. See if I can look this up here. I think it was critical. Let's see if it brings it up on my account here. Went to the Explore page. I wanted to go to my, let's see here. See if I can bring it up. Let's see here. I don't think I can bring it up on here, which is a pain. And obviously going back to what really sucks. I tweet so much a day, especially too with new coaches coming on board, new players. Let me see if we can find it from Google. Here we go. This might actually work. Beautiful. All right, I am gonna share my screen here. Go back to brand. Take this off, and then let's go to share screen. Want people to see this because I think it's not talked about enough. There we go. You look at this overall, okay, and the people that we've added. Okay, this is the room. Again, out of high school, 4-star quarterback Eli Holstein, who obviously was originally committed to Texas A&M. He commits from Texas A&M, commits to Alabama. So 4-star quarterback transfer Eli Holstein from Alabama. Obviously, you had 4-star DB Jeremiah England from Kentucky, 4-star defensive tackle Nick James from Indiana, 4-star defensive end David Ajebi from Clemson. Sorry if I'm butchering some of these names, by the way. 3-star wide receiver Raphael Williams from San Diego State, but I would really more put it towards Western Carolina. Obviously, 3-star linebacker Keith Thompson, Ohio. 3-star cornerback Taman Lynham, Nebraska. Defensive end Nate Matlack, Kansas State. Offensive lineman Lyndon Cooper, NC State. Tight end Jake Overton from Oregon State. Cornerback Josh McCarty, Eastern Michigan University. Wide receiver CJ Lee, Western Carolina. Desmond Reed, who has been a major spark and got a lot of conversation going and is actually the highest rated running back returning to the ACC next year, or coming into the ACC, I should say, is obviously Desmond Reed, who's done a really good job in camp, in spring camp. He's done a tremendous job. So him from Western Carolina, and then the most recent one, defensive end Chief Borders out of Nebraska. So you look at this, 14 players, but look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 of the 14 additions are from Power 4 teams, guys. I think you go around the country, you'll see a lot of teams adding from lower levels. What you see there, those guys from Power 4s, that's a Lions 412. That's a Lions 412 and paying players and paying for talent to get here. So I think when you look at the players that are coming here, it's not like everything is dipped into where it's everything from Western Carolina or everything from the FCS level or the Group of 5 level. I mean, there's numerous players here on this list that come from great places. Okay, Alabama. Obviously, Eli Holstein, when he was there, he did have a great spring camp. Obviously, he came in a little banged up, had a hamstring injury, but really turned it on in the middle to the end of the camp. That's why, right now, you got Nate Yarnell going into fall camp as the starter, but they'll certainly have a quarterback competition. Eli Holstein has risen up the charts very quickly, which led to, obviously, Christian Veyer going out the door, has passed numerous players on the depth chart that's currently there right now. But obviously, you got good programs, man. Alabama, Kentucky, Indiana, Clemson, Nebraska, Kansas State. Nebraska and Kansas State, really well known for developing good talent. NC State, they're well known for their offensive line. Lyndon Cooper looking for more playing time because it's so stacked on their offensive line. They returned a lot of guys again. Watched plenty of tape from numerous players from offensive lines, but players in general and teams from the ACC. I'll be doing a video on that, talking about each team on the schedule, how I see each team finishing in the ACC this year. We'll go into a bunch of that, but man, they do a great job of developing offensive linemen at NC State. Obviously, Oregon State, with them dropping down from the Power 5 from the Power 4 and dropping out of the power conferences. We get a guy from Oregon State, Jake Overman, more depth at tight end. Obviously, C.J. Lee, an All-American, freshman All-American last year, a wide receiver at Western Carolina. I mean, over 50% of their offensive production last year came from him. Then Desmond Reed, who was a tremendous asset, and a guy who was a true freshman last year, played really well. So he's true freshman or true sophomore. I can't remember. I have to look that up. Desmond Reed did a hell of a job. And then Chief Borders, who continues to climb the charts, was a 4-star rated kid. Texas A&M, Alabama, Nebraska, Florida, committed to Florida Gators, then goes to Nebraska, develops there. Now coming to Pitt to really turn it on, matured. Really, his projections are through the roof in terms of what his level and his ceiling can be. We'll continue to monitor that as the season goes on. But I think that it just can't be talked about enough. You look at that list overall, you have to have the conversation that says, man, it's a good list. It's a good list overall. And you're bringing in talent from Power 4 programs. The numerous names on that list, and I'm going to make it even bigger for you. But you look at that list and you see the talent that's coming in. Those are good institutions, good programs. You look overall. I like the guys they brought in. They've certainly addressed a number of needs before Charlie Partridge left. He brought in guys that fit the system, and I tell people all the time, Charlie's a guy who knows talent. Nobody's ever 100%. There's obviously certainly guys that you certainly miss on. You move on from them and you bring in new guys. These guys certainly have it. And I can tell you this, Nate Matlack is a guy who continues to jump up the boards. I think he continues to do really well in terms of just, one, he's going to be easy day one starter. I think he's going to thrive in this defense because of how aggressive he is. Thinking here, football hawk. I think Pitt will win 10 games this year. The schedule lines up perfectly. So here's my thing. I think 10 games is their ceiling at this point, football hawk, if I had to be honest. The question I truly have at this point, and what just has me going back and forth, is who do they pick at quarterback? That's number one. I think they have a good decision to make, where you really have two guys that can play quarterback. I think overall, I think Eli Holstein has the higher ceiling. Just my opinion from things I've seen, things I've heard, people I've talked to. I think he's got the higher ceiling. The guy is just a football junkie. From everything I've heard, they've called him the old school Pitt guy, is what they call him. And they said he's a guy that really just the ceiling is up there. But obviously you have Nate Yarnell, who's just done everything the right way. He comes in at the end of the year, clearly the best quarterback, I think, on the roster. Wasn't even a question. Just didn't get a lot of repetitions, whether that was Frank Cignetti because it wasn't his guy. There's a whole conversation on that. But overall, I think just my question is, where does this offense go under Cade Bell? And I think that's a fair question to ask at this point, because we just don't know. We haven't seen a body of work in terms of facing an ACC opponent or facing are facing a Big 12 opponent, a Big 10 opponent, SEC. We just haven't seen it yet. How is it going to translate? I think you guys are going to see the up-tempo offense, which we didn't see at all during the spring game. I think during the close scrimmage, it was a totally different scrimmage. It's just totally two different teams. That's why that's why any program across the country that doesn't take the spring game seriously, it's something for the fans to show a couple plays here and there, but mostly it's not really they're showing the offense. They're not showing anything, even on defense. But mostly when you look at Pitt's defense, the offensive coaches know what Pitt brings. Then pretty much they're in their base defense. They'll have their Delta package out there, but you know what you're going to get. But what happens is when Pitt's out there, they're able to disguise their blitzes, and that's what really makes Pitt really good, especially too when they're up front. But offensively, I think that's where the question lies. What type of offense is going to produce on week 2 against Cincinnati in Ohio, and then week 3 in the backyard brawl, we see West Virginia come back here, which was an electric atmosphere again. I shout out Pitt fans for that. Obviously, I jumped Pitt fans about attendance. Obviously, 2021 and 2022 were great years in terms of attendance. Over 50,000. We had better attendance records than West Virginia. West Virginia fans don't want to hear that. Tough nuts. Don't care. I'm telling you the truth. And the numbers support it. The statistics are up there, and we show it on Twitter all the time. Pitt was averaging over 50,000 when it comes to 2021 and 2022, which what did Pitt do in those 2 years? They won 20 games in 2 years, had a record of 20-7. You win, people show up. And I think, but it can still get better overall because when Clemson was here, it was roughly 61,000 that were here. Obviously, the stadium holds 68 to 70,000. We can fit 72,000. I think it was our record that we sold here. But overall, you want to see that continue to get better. You want to see you want to see the fan base continue to grow. And I think Pitt's done a really good job of that in terms of their marketing and what they're looking to do. You'd like to see some things change. I think at the front, when you look at the overall athletics department, I would like to see Pat Narduzzi and Heather Likett more involved with the Lions 412 and NIL, and I think we're finally getting there. Obviously, I think for how lackluster they've been in terms of getting involved, Alliance 412 has done a hell of a job and kept over 25 players on this team with Alliance 412 and NIL money, where you look at, hey, this is the foundation. We got to keep these guys. They've done a good job. But overall, this is a good list when you look at the teams that we've gotten from, teams that are known for development. Kansas State, I think, out of the Big 12, I think you look at them potentially winning the Big 12 this year because of how well they develop. I think the quarterback room will be kind of deciding, how they look this year. Obviously, with Will Howard moving on. Obviously, Will Howard was hurt last year. Their backup did really well. So we'll monitor that and see what they do. But overall, Kansas State does a really good job of development over in the Big 12. But you like to see the roster that's here. And I've said it before. You look at the transfer portal rankings. I don't put much work into them. I look at offer sheets because those are guys that you look at overall and say, hey, these guys fit the mold of what we're looking for. And there's other teams and other competition. Heck, Chief Borders, before he committed to Pitt, he was visiting at UCLA on top of other schools. It was a battle to get him. It was not easy. But he was mature enough to understand where he wants to go, why he wants to go there. Plus, potential for playing time as well. There's obviously some out there. Two guys that I continue to talk about. Obviously, we know about Nate Matlack looking to start, obviously, this year. Obviously, him. Chief Borders obviously coming in. He'll get some playing time. Obviously, playing time this year, depending upon how he learns the defense going in. I think he'll do a really good job. But two guys to watch, obviously, others besides Bam Brema. Two guys to watch who I think on the defensive end side of the football, defensive ends that actually produce this year and have a hell of a season, Jimmy Scott and Sincere Edwards. Keep those names in the back of your head, I think, because one, they had a great camp. Sincere Edwards has really just turned it on. I think Dayon Hayes leaving has allowed him to step into where we're going to need him this year. And I think he does a hell of a job. He's just his physical attributes and how he plays defensive line, his just physicality, especially with his violent hands, is something that is very rare for a true freshman to come in and have that type of mentality, but also that coaching. So I'm really happy about that. And obviously, Tim Doust has done a really good job at development since he's gotten here as well. But we'll stop sharing that there. Go there. But those are my thoughts on the transfer portal rankings. I've seen so many people talk about the transfer portal rankings and just over and over and over. And I'm like, guys, there's so much that is just so flawed in what those rankings are. Like, for instance, like how does a how does a team like Clemson, who doesn't bring anybody in and loses 2 guys, give a D and not an F? How does that work? Especially some of the teams that were in front of Pitt. It doesn't make any sense. They lost so many different starters, and then you bring guys in. Well, it's like, again, Colorado's up there for guys that they brought in. Well, they were up there last year, and they went 4-8. So overall, we'll see how that works out. Lastly, for the evening, Pat Narduzzi, in a recent article by CBS, I'll share the article with you guys here tonight. Pat Narduzzi ranked 38th in the college football. Right now is the 38th best head coach in college football, which is wild to think about. You'll see some of the names that are in front of him. I just think that that's absolutely mind-blowing. Obviously, people that were, when they talk about how they chose this, there was no form of specific guidelines of how they chose this top, top 68 coaches in the Power 4, ranking them from 1 to 68. I think when you look at this ranking, even though there were no guidelines or no specific articles to said why we put this coach here, you'll see some of the arguments that are there. I just think common sense. You look overall, Pat Narduzzi has won the second most ACC games since Pitt has arrived. Since Pitt, obviously, Pat Narduzzi's been here since 2015. I mean, you look overall, that's huge. Obviously, he's won 2 division titles, has won an ACC title. Some of these guys who are in front of him, like Mac Brown, Dave Clawson, I commend Dave Clawson on what he's been able to do at the smallest Power 4 team in the country overall in Wake Forest. But overall, you look at his record. I mean, he's got a losing record in ACC play. How the hell is he in front of Pat Narduzzi? That makes no sense. And Wake Forest has been to 1 ACC championship game, and they lost to Pitt. They got absolutely smacked by Pitt. Watched it in person. I was there. It was a beating, as you all know. But I'm going to share the article here. If I can bring it up here again. There. We'll start at the bottom. There's that one. I want to go to this one. There we go. So here we go. And we'll take off the banner that's there. Here's this one here. All right, overall, here was the top 25, just to show you some of the teams and the schools that were in front of him. Okay, I understand Jeff Brom went 17-9 in his final 2 seasons at Purdue, winning the Big Ten West in his final season, and obviously last year going to the AC Championship game. Fine, you want to put him up there, I can understand it. I mean, Pat Narduzzi went 20-7 over 2 years, but I guess they're really putting a lot of spark in this last season, going 3-9. But Dave Doran up here, for instance, I don't understand how Dave Doran's at 16 here. I understand Mike Gundy, Chris Kleiman, Lance Leipold, obviously James Franklin at Penn State out of the top 10. Some of these guys up here. Mike Norvell had 1 good season so far in 4 years? 4 years at Florida State. He's a little high for my liking. I mean, that's a little crazy to me. Let me see if I can find where I had. Oh, here we go. Okay. So I'm going to go here. Stop sharing. Then I'm going to share this screen here. There we go. All right. So obviously you see there Pat Narduzzi at 38. Let's see here. Let's start from the beginning here. So you look at 68. Some of these names, obviously, that makes sense to be all the way back here. 68, for instance, Deshaun Foster. He's a first-time head coach. Fran Brown at Syracuse. I'm excited to see what they actually do this year. He brought in a good transfer portal class. Had a number of different 2024 freshmen that he brought in. Obviously, took one from Pitt, a 4-star running back. We'll see. Jeff Levy, first-time head coach. Ryan Walters, first-time head coach. Kenny Dillingham's in his second year. He's got to get better. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. Obviously, he's got an uphill battle before he gets fired. Tony Elliott, obviously, he'll get fired here pretty soon because he's that's just a tough job there at Virginia. Colorado, Deion Sanders, obviously still there. He was 4-8 last year. It's the only Power 4 experience that he's had 1 year, obviously going 4-8. Troy Taylor, I think Stanford is a team to watch. They were 3-9 last year, But you look at their class overall, he was at 69 last year. Obviously, you lost a couple schools, obviously, with Oregon State and Washington State leaving the Power 5. But he's down here. Watch Stanford's a team to watch. And when I do my rankings of the ACC, you'll understand why. Scott Satterfield, his first year at Cincinnati, obviously, he's this low because, one, if he didn't get hired at Cincinnati, he was going to get fired at Louisville. He was 3-9 last year. Pitt should have won that game with average quarterback play. Even below average quarterback play, they would have won. I mean, Dracovic was really just horrific in that game. Sam Pittman, he's on the hot seat potentially. If he doesn't straighten up, he can get fired after this year. Justin Wilcox, another name to watch. Obviously, how Cal does this year. Brent Brennan, first time. He's obviously a head coach there. First year at Arizona. Dave Aranda, 3-9. He's on the hot seat this year. Brent Kean, name to watch. He's brought in a good class. I think watch their team as they get better this year. Northwestern, I'm a little shocked to see David Braun this low. And their explanation here. Where did that come from? If you don't remember, Braun was named interim coach at Northwestern shortly before the season started, primarily because he was new to the staff and had no connection to any hazing accusations that Pat Fitzgerald and his job, which was a very questionable, firing there. A lot of lack of evidence that was there. But then Braun led the Wildcats to an 8-5 mark, far exceeding anybody's reasonable expectations in 2023. Again, I think he should be higher. Sharon Moore, obviously new head coach. Bill O'Brien, new head coach, Boston College. Going to be really fun to watch them in the coming years. Obviously, they've got a very difficult schedule. Their first game of the year is actually against Florida State on prime time. I don't expect them to do anything. They've got a really good staff up there. Bill O'Brien did a really good job in his short period at Penn State, obviously during the accusations and not the accusations, the firing of Joe Paterno and the Jerry Sandusky scandal that was just absolutely horrific. Bill O'Brien, I thought, came in and kept that program together, obviously with the horrific acts that where they were at Penn State. Virginia Tech, this is a team that I want Pitt fans to really watch this year. Brent Pry, I think possibly, in my opinion, may have one of the better defensive lines, if not a top 2 defensive line in the ACC this year. When I go over a lot of my stuff, I've watched so much tape on Virginia Tech, the guys they've brought in. They've had a couple of Alabama transfers as well. The guys they brought in, I think they got great potential, and some of those guys are really good. I think the quarterback play is still a question. I think there's a lot of guys that are really hyped up on the quarterback play for Virginia Tech, but I still have a question mark there. But obviously, he's in his third season at Virginia Tech. We'll watch that. BYU, I understand that. They had a losing record again. Manny Diaz, first-time head coach. Billy Napier, he's just going to have a good year this year because, he'll probably go 4-8, probably 3-9. He'll get fired. Shane Beamer, he'll be lucky if he doesn't get fired this year. Rhett Lashley, a guy at SMU, really took over for TCU's head coach. Obviously, why am I drawing a blank on him? In the comment section, if you're able to help me out there. Sonny Dykes. Sonny Dykes obviously did a hell of a job at SMU, goes from SMU to TCU. TCU goes to the national championship game. Doesn't fare well for them, but they go to the national championship game in his first year. That's a hell of a year in terms of offense and where we are in college athletics. That was great to see. Rhett Lashley has really turned it on towards the year. At the end of the year, obviously the bowl game, I don't put too much into a bowl game. He lost to end the year, obviously, which was a disappointing loss. But Lashley's coming off a conference title after SMU went 11-3, undefeated in league play last year. Of course, the Mustangs were AAC members last season, which is nowhere near the ACC, and will debut in the ACC in 2024. There's no shortage of people willing to disparage the ACC, including plenty of college football playoff selection committee, which I don't agree with. I mean, Florida State didn't make it because Travis, Jordan Travis just wasn't healthy. If he was healthy, they were in the playoffs. So it didn't have anything to do with the ACC. So I just, the whole bashing the ACC is just bullshit in my opinion. That's aggravating in itself. Joey McGuire, obviously Texas Tech. He's a good football coach in Texas. He spent a lot of majority of his time in the high school ranks in Texas. Numerous people that I know that are in the Big 12, especially coaches, respect Joey McGuire a lot. I think he turns it around this year. I think he's a guy to watch this year in the Big 12. I think he'll be a surprise team last year. I think their quarterback play between guys getting hurt just didn't fare well for them, but I think he's a tremendous football coach. He's had a hell of a culture down there. I think he really turns it around this year. Kurt Cignetti, a last name, Signetti, that we know very well. I would call this the good brother, I guess. He's had a hell of an experience. James Madison gets hired at Indiana. He's obviously a little bit higher than what I would have thought, especially, too, not having any Power 4 experience, but he's had tremendous success, 62 years old, 119 and 35 in his career, so you got to respect him. I mean, he's done a hell of a job, 4 conference titles, had James Madison the AP top 25 in each of the last 2 seasons. Then we have the crap team from the South here, West Virginia. Neil Brown, obviously, he's 5 years in. He'll be going into his 6th season at West Virginia. First 5 years, he's had 3 losing seasons, but last year he goes 9-4. I think the schedule was very much respectable to helping them really get to that 9-4 record. They were 8-4 in regular season play. Really bad losses, though, to one of them to Houston, who actually fired Dana Holgorsen. Dana Holgorsen gets his revenge on West Virginia. Embarrasses them on a last play Hail Mary shot that ends up helping them win the game. They beat 3-9, 3-8 Baylor on a last-second play. They beat North Carolina with half their roster missing. Drake May, obviously a top 3 pick at quarterback, wasn't on there. So I don't know how much we put into that. Obviously, I think Vegas has them at roughly 6.5 wins this year. I think they're not too bought in yet. Neil Brown, there's not a lot of confidence down there, I think, from Ren Baker. Restructured the contract, gave him a year extension, but lowered the buyout percentage. So if he doesn't do well this year, it'll be easier to fire him. Mike Loxley from Maryland, he's there at 41. Rutgers, Greg Schiano, I think he's building up. He had some really good fire, really at the early portion of the year last year and fell apart. We'll continue to watch them, but Rutgers, obviously, historically, it just has not done well and fared well. PJ Fleck at 39. And there is Pat Narduzzi. And before we get into it here, just want to make sure I had no more comments there. All right, good. No more comments there. But you see Pat Narduzzi here at 39. And here's the commentary on Pat Narduzzi. The Pitt coach has been an interesting case in these rankings. Let me make this a little bit bigger. The Pitt coach has been an interesting case in these rankings. I'm curious if his gruff persona affects how people view him, which causes him to miss out on some of the credit he deserves, which I agree with. Dudes can come off as an asshole sometimes, just how it is. That's kind of how it's affected him. Considering what he's accomplished with the Panthers, he's won an ACC title and played for another, which is more than plenty of other ACC coaches ranked ahead of him can say, which I agree. That said, his teams can also be tough to watch at times. That was the case last season when the Panthers finished 3-9 after going 20-7 over the previous 2 years. It was Narduzzi's worst season at Pitt, and his stock took a hit amongst our pollsters. In 2023, he was ranked 29th in the top 30, which is still, I thought, a little bit low after 2 years going 20-7. So he dropped 9 spots. But you look at this list. Before we go into it here, I go down the list. Here are some names that are in front of Pat Narduzzi when it comes to names in front of him. Okay. So Pat Narduzzi, according to this list, is ranked 8th in the 38th overall in the country, but 8th in the ACC. From number 1 to number 7, who are in front of him. Okay. Dabo Swinney obviously is the highest. Obviously, he's up there. He's a top 10 coach, which I agree with. Until we start seeing something maybe this year, he's got to let guys actually coach him. We'll see if he actually does. We'll see if he lets Garrett Riley actually coach. We'll monitor that. But Dabo Swinney in front of him, I agree with. Mike Norvell, if you really want to put him in front, he did win the ACC, so he's got 1 ACC title. Okay, put him in front of them. I get it. Here's where I start having questions. Dave Doran is in front of Pat Narduzzi. Dave Doran has not been to an ACC title game, has not won an ACC title. How is he in front of Pat Narduzzi? And again, with all Pat Narduzzi's faults, and he's got plenty of faults to him, Dave Doran should not be in front of Pat Narduzzi. Jeff Brom has not won an ACC title. Yes, he went there last year in his first year, did well at Purdue, finished out his last season there. He went to a Big Ten title, but it was in the Big Ten West. I mean, I guess you could say the same thing about the ACC Coastal, but Big Ten West is pretty bad football. But I can maybe understand him being in front. Here's a major red flag to me. Dave Clawson, as I talked to you guys about before, at number 5 in the ACC. How the hell is he in front of Pat Narduzzi? That makes no sense at all whatsoever. Whether it's ACC wins, overall wins, conference titles, division titles, doesn't matter. Pat Narduzzi has more than all of them. So that makes no sense. Here's another one that's mind-blowing at number 6 in the ACC. Mario Cristobal. How the hell is Mario Cristobal in front of Pat Narduzzi? Mario hasn't won anything since he's been in the ACC. Has been a huge letdown. The NIL money that they have down there is pretty much endless. With Ruiz down there, who I've had coaches on the coach down at Miami in that building. They said it's absolutely a madhouse. They said getting those guys, especially at Miami, to more focus on not the beach life, obviously, than the attractions at Miami, which are plenty. I've lived down there, especially for a summer for college ball, college baseball. I'll tell you what, there's plenty of stuff to do. There's never a boring night in Miami, Delray, Boca Raton, Fort Lauderdale. There's never a dull night. So Mario Cristobal in front of Pat Narduzzi makes no sense. I understand he did a good job at Oregon, but he's here in the ACC. How the hell is he in front of Pat Narduzzi after his first 3 years there? Doesn't make any sense. Obviously, another one in front of him, Mac Brown. No idea how he's in front of him. It's okay. He had a better year than Pat Narduzzi last year, but Pat Narduzzi has more division titles and has more AC titles. Shouldn't be in front of him. The only two coaches that should be in front of Pat Narduzzi are Dabo Sweeney and Mike Norvell. That's it. The lowest Pat Narduzzi, in my opinion, should be as number 3. And that's because of just overall, not just last year, overall success. I understand last year being 3-9, it's a question mark. If he goes again and has another bad year, then we have the conversation, because then he's probably I know he's going to be on the hot seat. And depending upon if it's really bad, he may not be here. So you look overall, one bad year, at 3-9, but overall, you look at his success, you got to put Pat Narduzzi at 3. And I think that article, when you look at him there, I think it's his persona. He just, and I know through the coaching ranks, I know he gets a bad vibe. There are guys that wouldn't take the job here because of who he is. That kind of stuff comes around every once in a while. There's just some guys. But then there are numerous other guys who are veterans in this is basically in the coaching world that loves him because he's old school. He's loyal to his staff. You saw a number of different guys here that stayed here over a long period of time because they trust Pat Narduzzi. They love the culture he's built. The players love the culture. The coaches love the culture. And obviously, Pat was able to attract younger talent, younger coaching talent here. You look at, Lamar Lindsay. He's another guy. That's a huge one. Jacob Bronowski. I mean, he just, special teams coordinator of the year. I know Tennessee and Georgia were really hot on our tails and trying to find a way to get him on their roster for coaches. And we were lucky to get him, made sure we got him and paid him. You look at, obviously, Jeremy Darveau came from Western Carolina because I think it's important for the offensive coordinator to have their offensive line coach to be able to coach up the offensive line and know exactly how you want the offense to run. I think that was a clear hire to show, hey, we're not waiting around. We want to be successful this year. So, and then obviously, too, J.J. Lasser coming from Western Carolina. He went to Old Dominion. Obviously, he got a raise because of, he was a number 1 FCS coach of the year. Number 1 FCS coach, wide receiver coach of the year. So production. So he did his job. And he got guys drafted too, by the way, in this most recent draft. So you have to apply that and agree to that. So that was big. But overall, when you look at this list, I mean, just questionable. Mac Brown's in front of him. Brett Bielema, how is he in front of him? He's achieved nothing. Last year, finishing 5-7. That makes no sense. Brent Venables, he took heat, obviously, in his first year, going 6-7, but the change in approach, the culture of the program, went 10-3 last year and 7-2 in the Big 12. So he bumped up. He was at 52. He jumped up 18 spots. Hugh Freeze, I don't know how he's in front of him either. Mike Elko, I can understand that because of the conference play, what he did, but still, that's even questionable. Jed Fish, he did a good job. Dave Clawson, hell no. Matt Rule, he had a bad year last year, but overall success, I have him in front of Narduzzi because of the conference where he's been at. I understand that because he's built those programs up. Gus Malzahn, I don't agree with. Jonathan Smith, he did a good job at Oregon State. And then Willie Fritz at 26. I mean, but he was in the AAC, so I don't know how you have him there. He hasn't even coached in the Power 4 yet. So plenty of questions all around when you see coaches that go through here. So I think overall, I just think that you look at the overall questions of how they were ranking coaches. I don't agree with a lot of it. So that was a huge question mark that I had. But overall, I want to hear your thoughts when this video is posted. Obviously, hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think. See, drop the banner here. Obviously, guys, I don't see any more questions in the comment section tonight. It's been an early one for sure. Oh, yeah, whenever you get into it, any big-name recruits visiting anytime soon, specifically from the WPIAL, but I'm good with a kid from anywhere. Yeah, right now, obviously, they're putting together a huge list. I'll put together stuff for their June recruiting visits. That'll be the next time you see recruits on campus. Plenty of good recruits coming in. Speedy Tortoise, I'll be able to get you a whole list the next time we have the Sunday conversation. But, guys, of course, that's another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. If you have not done so, subscribe to the channel. Subscribe down below. Hit the like button. Of course, it helps with the algorithm and brings in more conversation. Guys, as always, the show is what it is because of you guys. I cannot thank you enough for your support. Everything you guys do for the show is what it is because of you. And again, we'll be having player interviews drop here. We've already had 2 commit interviews already done. We'll be dropping those. I told you at the end of May, we're almost there. We'll be dropping those. So those will go out. But of course, guys, thank you so much for supporting the show. Again, sticking with the ACC, but more importantly, as always, hail to Pitt. I'll see you guys next time.